The Albanese government will go to the next election with the dubious distinction of being one of the biggest spending, highest taxing governments in our history. Also, one of the luckiest, but that luck is running out. We've told you for some time the budget is from now going to deteriorate fast and there'll be no budget surplus in sight for the next decade at least. Now, that analysis comes from the respected economist Chris Richardson, who joins me now. Chris, many thanks for your time. This is the reality of what Anthony Albanese faces going to the polls. There are no interest rate cuts on the horizon. There is a cost of living crisis. Energy bills are rising, not falling. And then on top of that, you've got this deterioration of the budget that the government really has to own.
And it is going to be a challenge. Most people look at the two budget surpluses and try to understand, well, that's magnificent. How did it happen? The answer is budgets move not merely because of the decisions of politicians, but also because of the everything else out there in the economy. And three big things: war, migration, and inflation, all added to the tax take in recent times, much more than Treasury expected. You just flashed up that chart. It added to more than $1/3 trillion added into expected taxes by Treasury as a result of that combination.
Okay, so $1/3 trillion. Now, you'd sit there and say you'd be hard-pressed to spend that money, but this government has found ways to spend it. And yes, it got budgets back into surplus to its credit, but the reality is its own measures now are baked into the budget. And that's the reason why there is no budget repair anytime soon in the next decade.
The oldest mistake in the budgetary book, and others have done it before, is, you get a phase of luck and it looks better, and so you spend. There's always demands from pretty much everywhere across the nation for extra spending. The government, since being elected, has made decisions that have added $104 billion to spending. They've also added $44 billion to taxing. So that's a bit of an offset, the net of the two. A $60 billion worsening in the budget. That didn't matter in the sense that it didn't stop surpluses because of the luck that was rolling in. But the luck is now turning. You look at those three things: war added to the price of the stuff we sell to the world. Migration gave us more people to tax. Inflation took money from families, gave it to government. Each of those three things is now winding down and its impact on the budget. That makes it less easy from here.
Okay, so normally what happens is that governments and Treasury underestimate the revenue that will come in. And so by doing that, they underestimate the price of iron ore, the price of coal, maybe the unemployment rate. All those things they generally tend to undercook so that there is almost a hollow log of cash that comes in as a surprise. But that also is disappearing.
Yeah, and so those factors you point to, we've seen it in steroids in recent times. Treasury's misses were big around things like coal and iron ore prices. They were big around migration. They were big initially around inflation. And that combination put much more extra tax dollars into Canberra's pockets. And that's always been a risk. We saw a phase, Howard and Costello were lucky, not as lucky as the current government has been, but Howard and Costello similarly enjoyed a lucky boost to the budget. And that's when governments make mistakes. They assume the luck is here to stay and they spend too much of it.
Okay, Chris, is there anything the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, now he wants to be seen as one of the great treasurers of Australia, a reforming treasurer, somebody who's very active. Is there anything he can do to help fix this right now?
And ahead of the election, it's probably too late. A bunch of the things that need doing in the budget are going to be very unpopular, one way or another. On the tax side, we don't tax gas properly. We don't tax superannuation properly. We tax cigarettes a lot, but we don't enforce it, leading to a huge black market. There are all sorts of problems on the tax side. On the spending side, there's that sweetheart deal on the GST share that Western Australia gets. There's things like the NDIS, which is magnificent in concept. It's trying to do the right thing, but the how we actually do it is ending up failing both the nation's disabled and our taxpayers. These are tricky problems that we have let fester, partly because the luck handed us a bunch of money and the pressure came off doing the hard yards on budget reform.
Okay, it's going to be fascinating just to see exactly what takes place from here, whether we get the mid-year financial and economic outlook or fiscal and economic outlook, or whether we get a new budget. We don't know. Chris Richardson, many thanks for your time.
Thanks, Ross.